So hardwood cutting propagation with bottom heat. This is a 2-week later update. I'm going to link here to the first video where I introduce this concept and talk about how it's put together, shows you the wire and all that. I won't get into that in this video. Definitely check that out if you haven't seen it. But what I thought I'd share is, now that we're 2 weeks later, how some of these cuttings are doing. Now, it's certainly early on to make a full assessment, but so far it's really promising. There are definitely a few issues, but overall it's working really nicely. First issue is our dog enjoys the smell of black currants. So she leapt in here and rolled around, and probably not an issue that most people have to deal with, but if you have a dog that likes strong smells, you might want to put a wall up. That's what we did here. I have a kestrel birdhouse and a piece of wood and some tubs that are blocking, but that was so far our biggest hassle, not a common one for most people. But I just wanted to show some of the things that are in here. First of all, the density of this is, I think, interesting to see. You've got, I'll go through the species that are in here. I'm pretty excited about them. We've got York elderberry, consort blackcurrant, Frontenac grape, Scotia elderberry, I think there's Concord grape. So we're doing different species. So in other words, I wouldn't do Concord and Titania blackcurrant right next to each other, because it's going to be hard to figure out who's who. So different species act as ways of marking the spacing. There's Marge elderberry, which is a nice new cultivar, Wildwood elderberry, Titania blackcurrant. I've got honeyberries in here, which I'm very excited to see how they perform as a hardwood cutting. We've got big bluebird and bluebell, both compatible pollinators to one another, and more varieties of blackcurrant. There's sea buckthorn in here, or Seabury. I've got 2 varieties of that. There's red yastaberry. There's more blackcurrants. So you can get the sense of what's going on in here. In a 3 by 8 foot bed, we've got hundreds of hardwood cuttings, and so literally, if like 5 of these take and we get plants, it's worth the time and effort. I'm going to guess at the end of the day we'll be looking at 80 to 90% rooting. Just want to show us some examples here of what you could expect if you set up hardwood propagation. I wouldn't call this best practice to dig these out and look at them, but I just want people to see what to expect when you're doing hardwood propagation. So at the bottom of this cut, it is, let's see if I can get that to zoom in. There we go. It is callousing. See that white ring where it's swollen? Those are all proto-roots. That's the plant healing itself. Let's see if I can get that to be better. There we go. Healing itself and getting ready to form roots. These buds under the soil line are starting to grow. They'll continue to grow, and they will provide roots as well. And let's see if I can find a better example. I'm going to pause here and pull some out. Hold on. Pardon my dirty thumbnail. Now this doesn't look like that much unless you're into propagation, but this is a honeyberry or haskap, and what I'm seeing here is good callousing starting to form at the base of this cut, and new cellular division or root initials just starting to form right here. Very early stages, but we also have, freezing weather, and we're in a cold garage, so anything that's moving forward with this is pretty exciting. And in this case, I've got way too long of a cutting, so I'm going to go ahead and trim this down now that I know it's promising and will work, and I should be able to get about 20 cuttings out of this one named variety of haskap by seeing that with bottom heat. And again, I'm not using rooting hormone. I wish I could get this to zoom better. There we go. Without rooting hormone, I'm just using warm spring water with honey diluted in it, and I soak the base of my cuttings in that for a little while so they can take up the sweetness and the amino acids, the antimicrobial, antifungal bits, and then they go into the bottom heat. So nothing sterilized, nothing fancy. And these are a bunch of bluebell honeyberry cuttings that seem very promising that they'll take. This is another example. This is a York elderberry. And elder and blackcurrant tend to root pretty well on their own anyway. And as I mentioned in the other video, you can just stick these cuttings in the soil in the fall. But for 12 days later, 14 days later from this cutting, you can see that, again, that white callousing at the bottom, and then these white tufts that are happening on the stem. So that isn't perlite. Each of these tufts are root initials. They're going to spring forth with some really nice roots very shortly. And again, these will also offer roots. And that cutting is pretty significant, but you'll notice the callousing and the roots are really moving forward. The top is still as asleep as it was before because it's cool up here and warm and moist down here. So this thinks it's summer, this thinks it's winter, which it almost still is. And so the base is going to grow in advance of the top and really develop roots before the top grows. So again, to the untrained eye, not that exciting. To my semi-untrained eye, very, very exciting for just a handful of days. So this is the base of a Seabury cutting, which certainly does not look nearly as exciting as the elderberry. But to my eye, what I'm seeing here is a swelling point. Now, Seabury, unlike blackcurrant and elderberry, it is one of the most challenging I've found to root. And so I'm experimenting with a number of styles. But last season with bottom heat, we got some rooting, and it tended to make one or two long, ropey white roots from a single point. And that's what I think I'm seeing here is a root initial swelling from below the bark, getting ready to pop. That wasn't there when I put that cutting in. And again, this is without rooting hormone. I wouldn't call this, oh, it's ready to pot up and go to plant sales, but it's on its way. It's showing a promising movement towards that. I find in general with Seabury, you want a fatter cane, thicker than a pencil, and ideally with a swelling root flare or a branch flare from when it connects to the next branch up. That seems to be where they root the best. And it's very promising to think that this may be able to do it with honey and be able to skip entirely using rooting hormone. So that's promising as well. So, a little ways to go with all these. Boy, I need a better camera. Hey, if somebody wants to buy me a nice camera, I'll promise to make all my videos in focus from now on. But anyway, this is the bottom heat cutting propagation, working really well. We'll do another update once we're ready to move some of these plants out into the garden. Thanks for watching.